Eat Boxing Compete. Welcome back to another boxing betting tip show. Delighted as always to be joined by Paul Kelly. Paul, not a massive bump week of boxing this weekend. However, we've still got a massive unification fight in the light heavyweight division, to be fair, and a couple of other fights as well. So looking forward to seeing what you've got for us. We'll go straight into it. I imagine you've got something for Artur Beterbiev versus Joe Smith Jr. It takes place on Saturday night for 3 of the 4 light heavyweight belts. Really looking forward to the fight. Let us know what your betting tip is.
Yeah, thanks, Elliot. So you're right. Yeah, my first one does come from that light heavyweight unification, and it is a really good fight. I think there's quite a few different factors. I wouldn't be surprised if quite a lot of people actually think Joe Smith could pull it off. And fair play. He's quite a big underdog. I think he's almost nearly 5-1 to win. I personally still think Beterbiev will be too strong. I just don't think you can ignore his knockout ratio. 17 knockouts in 17 fights is ridiculous. And although Smith Jr. is arguably one of the better opponents he'll have faced, he knocked out. It took him near the end. He knocked out Vlasov in the end. He's knocked out Callum Johnson, obviously, who we know on UK shores, and I can see it being another Beterbiev knockout. In terms of value, I've kind of gone for a 4-round time period, and I've gone for rounds 5 to 8, which is 11 to 5. So just better than 2-1. And the reason I've gone for rounds 5 to 8 is because if you look at Beterbiev's record, his last 3 knockouts in a row have come in rounds 9, 10, and 10, I believe. So you might think that the late knockout is more likely, but I think that Joe Smith will be. I think he'll know, similarly to what happened to Callum Johnson. Joe Smith will know he has the power. To hurt Beterbiev potentially. Beterbiev's been down by Callum Johnson. I think Joe Smith will look at that and think he can do the same and could potentially get exposed. When he's going for the big knockout himself, I think that you leave yourself open to other shots. I think Beterbiev's too smart, and I could see him. Yeah, I'm going to put my neck on the line and say between rounds 5 to 8 for Beterbiev.
Interesting. Yeah, sounds good. I think worth bearing in mind that Joe Smith is a puncher in his own right. So I think you'd expect this fight not to go the distance. But yeah, I like that bet. I think that I feel like Joe Smith's just kind of got to outpunch the puncher, if that makes sense. If he's going to win this fight, he's not going to, win this fight on points. And yeah, so I think it's going to be fascinating to see how Joe Smith approaches this. And Beterbiev, big fan of Beterbiev, but Joe Smith is arguably the 3rd best light heavyweight in the world, and he is a world champion in his own right. So it's going to be interesting to see Beterbiev up against that caliber. He's fought a lot of kind of top 10 light heavyweights, but as we know, he's not fought Bivol. And Joe Smith Jr., I believe, is the next guy kind of on that list. And you want to see Beterbiev against Joe Smith, Bivol, Buatsi, maybe in a year's time. You really want to see him against continue to fight these other top guys. I think my only other comment is that Joe Smith, I think like people are writing Joe Smith off. I think people are looking at Beterbiev and thinking, oh, this guy's a beast. But 5-1 just for Joe Smith to win, in my opinion, it's worth putting a 5 on, because it's not absolutely outrageous to think that could happen. Beterbiev's fantastic, but he's been flawed against Callum Johnson. If he's flawed against Callum Johnson, I think the similar thing can happen against Joe Smith. So yeah, really interesting fight, but I think 5-1 is a bit too wide for Joe Smith. But I'm not surprised those odds are wide because of how much of a beast Beterbiev is deemed to be. Yeah, really looking forward to that one.
No, I think you're right in saying, when I did look at the odds, I think 5-1 did kind of jump out at me, and I can see why you would back that. Yeah, no, fair play. I think that at 5-1 is definitely worth a few quid.
Nice one, mate. Cool. I believe you've got one more for us. this weekend?
Yeah, I do. I don't think, compared to recent weeks and months that we've been doing this betting show, I think this week is one of the worst in terms of high caliber fights. I think, obviously that light heavyweight unification is arguably one of the biggest of the year. But other than that, there's no real massive ones that jump out to you. There's no UK show. There is a UK show. There's a Josh Kelly one, but the odds and stuff on that are he's at 1 to 100 to win and stuff. So I haven't even looked. So the fight I have looked at is in the featherweight division, and it's Abraham Nova against Rabaisi Ramirez, I think you pronounce his name. And on paper, it looks like a really good fight. You look at Nova, and he's 21-0 with 15 knockouts. And you look at Ramirez, and he's 9-1. The one loss came on his debut. So I think you look at losses like that, and you think that they don't really have a bearing on the fighter, because it was like over a 4-rounder or something. And since then, he's notched up a few good victories. Ramirez, he's 1-5 favorite here. People might know him from fighting Eric Donovan. He knocked him out in 3 rounds. I think, although Nova's had 21 fights and has won them all, and Ramirez has only had 10 as a pro, I still have got to go with Ramirez, to be quite honest with you. It's a bit of a cliche, but like that he's Cuban and he's a southpaw. That Cuban southpaw style is a nightmare for anyone. I don't care what you say. And I think I think it's a really good fight, and I could see it being close. But I just think Ramirez will edge it out. I don't think it will be a stoppage, although both have better than half knockout ratio. I don't think it'll be a stoppage. So Ramirez on points is 4-6. So as a standalone bet, maybe not great, but if you're going to add it into a double or a treble, I think it'll maybe enhance your odds a little bit.
Yeah, sounds good. I think Ramirez, we saw him he was on the undercard of Josh Taylor, Jack Catterall, I think, when he fought Eric Donovan, and looked very impressive. I think Greg and Elliot discussed that in the weekly preview, that although he lost his debut, he's come back and looks a real problem now, and is kind of one to look out for. And I think this is kind of a big kind of breakthrough fight for him. I think Abraham Nova's 21-0, I think he said. Yep. So yeah, it's one to look out for this weekend. Interesting that he's 1-5. I think that's very interesting. Okay, cool. I think that's just the 2 this weekend. Have you got, if you put those 2 bets in a double, have you got the added total, Paul?
Yeah, if you put the Beterbiev knockout in rounds 5-8 in a double with Ramirez on points, it comes out at 4.33 to 1. So £10 would get you £53 or so, including your stake. So although again not as huge and as big a bet as perhaps I usually tip, but definitely one I can see happening.
Good stuff. Nice one. All right, well, thank you, Paul, as always. We'll be back next weekend for there's a Sky show next weekend. There's a DAZN show in the States. There's lots more to discuss next week. So next week will be a more exciting show. But yeah, thanks as always, Paul. Really appreciate your tips.
Cheers, all the best.